Hi, I'm Nikki Butler and I'm a scar specialist. Now, what's prompted me to record a video today is actually one of my business mentors really challenged me about why do I do what I do? Why am I a scar specialist? And I've always had a fairly standard response that, I've grown up with scarring and it's really important to me to help others feel comfortable and confident in their skin. And he actually challenged me and said, that's not why. And it got me really thinking and sort of looking back on my own history with my scars. Now, some of you may know already that I had a nasty childhood accident when I was 11 and I was left with quite significant facial scarring on my forehead. I have actually since had around 14 operations, have multiple scars on my body. And I guess it's got me to really reflect on the scars that I've shared, the stories that I've shared, and actually those that I've kept very private and why that is. Now, one of the things that I really, really admire about anybody that I support through scar improvement treatments is their honesty and bravery. And I've really looked at why I just am so passionate about helping you improve your scars. And actually, it's not about improving how your scars look, although that does obviously come with having clinical treatments. It's really about how do you feel about your scars. And when I think about the impact of suffering with significant facial scarring from the age of 11 and going on to have subsequent surgeries and the stories and the emotions that are wrapped around that, that's really why it's so important, because I know how it feels to live with scarring and to have other people comment or be in situations that have really affected my confidence. Now, having a nasty scar from the age of 11, so I was hit by a car, I had multiple injuries, but I was left with scars on my forehead that I actually had to be stitched back together in two parts because that there wasn't enough skin to do it all at once. Now, kids are cruel, so when you're 11 and you're going to school with really nasty scarring, other kids are going to call you Scarface. So I became hyper conscious of how I looked and how I was perceived by the people from a really, really young age. I became an expert at applying makeup to cover it from, I think, probably 13, 14. I always had a fringe, but I couldn't really go anywhere without focusing on whether somebody was going to see my scars and what they were going to say. And actually, it wasn't just children, like adults that would just feel they could just ask questions like, how did you do that? Or ask my parents. Now, the story wrapped around that scar is really traumatic. So I was knocked over at the top of the road where I lived. And actually my mum found me. The driver had initially driven off. And my mum and my then 10-year-old sister were in the car, came to the top of the road, and my mum had seen that a little girl had been knocked over. And it was me. I still can't tell the story without getting emotional. Okay. So there's so much trauma in that story. And so for somebody to just ask me, like, where did you get that scar? Or ask my mum, had no idea the feelings that they were digging up. And for me, that was guilt. I'd been hit by a car. It wasn't my fault. But the guilt of what my family had been through, that my mum had to cross the road to find out if her daughter was still alive. The weeks that ensued, the time that I was in hospital, the recovery, the flashbacks that my mum still has. My mum's blood still runs cold when she has an ambulance. And the subsequent impact for me, having panic attacks and chronic anxiety, it was really difficult. And I think that that's one of the things that has really led me to be so passionate about helping you improve how you feel about your scars. And sometimes that comes with improving the visual appearance, but it can also be about helping you feel more confident in your skin so that you don't feel like that's the focal point of your life. And many people that I treat, maybe this will resonate with you, but their lives can almost become sort of they just revolve around keeping scars hidden. I wouldn't go out to places where I couldn't cover my scar with makeup or my hair. So that ruled out swimming, that ruled out holidays, that ruled out, so many things that I maybe would have done with friends I dreaded people asking me about it if they saw it, because it brought up all of this trauma. And even to this day as an adult, I can't talk about it without feeling quite emotional. And I have had years of therapy to try and deal with that. And I had a trigger. I was diagnosed as autistic and ADHD as an adult. And one of the defining factors that the psychiatrist has said to me was, so you were hit by a car when you were younger. As if that was an indication of I had been inattentive in terms of my ADHD. So then the shame and the guilt and the feelings that was my fault, even though deep down I knew I wasn't, was all stirred up again. And I think just understanding that scars are not necessarily about what we see. It's about the feelings, the emotions, the journey, and what's attached to that. And when I treat clients, sometimes I will treat a client that will come in and they have a scar, and it might be relatively small, and they'll say to me, I feel really vain, I feel really silly. But actually that scar is usually attached to something quite traumatic, and the feelings that it gives them of feeling unattractive or not good enough or just really self-conscious, and they don't want people looking at them, that has a huge impact on their life. And I can empathise with that. I think that my forehead scar, like having that from such a young age, has really impacted and influenced how I felt in my skin. You know, I've grown up feeling not good enough, not attractive, you know, that I'm flawed. And unfortunately, as I've matured, we are in a society where all you see over social media and media is flawless perfection. That's what's celebrated. You can get filters that make you look entirely flawless. And for me, there's something fundamentally wrong with that we are celebrating being flawless and we are aspiring to something that isn't even real. And what that has done is it creates this sense of, I sometimes feel like that I am, you know, flawed or unlovable. And I have 17 scars in total. And I'll perhaps talk about some of those at another time, because they've also had their impact. And something that really sticks in my mind is I had quite a cruel ex-partner in my late 30s who said two things to me. Number one was, if I was an animal, I would have been put to sleep by now, because I'd had quite a lot of surgery. And also said, I don't know if I can be with you because there is so much wrong. You've had so much surgery. I don't think I want the responsibility of looking after you when you're older. The impact of somebody commenting on, you know, the associated scars, how they looked visually, and that they felt like I wasn't good enough or worthy of their efforts and time, has been crushing over the years. And this is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I truly believe we all have the absolute right to feel confident and comfortable in our own skin. And I feel very strongly about helping you to be able to achieve that. And it's something that I'm constantly working on myself. And, you know, the emotions that go with scars can fluctuate. You know, I've got scars that I can feel really proud of and think, wow, I was strong, I was resilient, that was a time in my life that I overcame some challenges. And then I can feel angry that I have been through so much and I have scarring. And then I can feel ashamed or as if I'm not good enough because I can see people looking at my scars, or somebody asks me a question that makes me feel uncomfortable. And these are all of the things that impact how we essentially show up in our lives and how we feel. And I think if you're watching this and you have scars, or maybe you're watching this and you don't have any scarring that affects you, I think what I would invite you to think about is, when you see somebody that has scarring, please consider how you respond to it. Please appreciate that there is so much more that goes into that, and that person is really brave on so many levels that you will never see. It's like the swan that's gliding on the surface and the little legs going underneath. It can take so much effort to just show up some days. So please give that some consideration, perhaps before you ask a question that might really trigger some emotional trauma. But equally, listen. If somebody wants to talk to you, respond with empathy and kindness and understanding. And I think it would be a miracle if we got through our lives without having scarring of some description. There was a study in 2019 from Bristol University that 20.4 million people in the UK alone have scarring. That's vast. That's incredible. And a lot of that scarring will be trauma based or will have stories attached to it. So I just invite you to think about what I have shared with you today. I will talk about some of my other scarring at another time. I have had some surgeries that have led to essentially some deformities, that have really let people see that I've had some significant trauma going on. If you would like to reach out to me, I'd love to hear from you. Please know that anything you share with me is always in absolute confidence, and anything we discuss is, with empathy, with kindness. If you want to get in contact, you can find my website, which is nickybutler.co.uk, or reach out to me on social media channels, or send me an email directly to nikki@nickybutler.co.uk. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you know you are perfect exactly as you are.